What's good, everybody? I'm Jędrek, he's Sodek, and today we are gonna talk about Amulet, why it was pretty bad after Modern Horizons 2 dropped, and why it's good now. Let's go. Alrighty, so we've decided to divide this video into 5 distinct segments. First, we're gonna talk about what is Amulet, then we are gonna to talk about why Amulet was bad, what changed, then why it's good now, and finally, how to beat it. So Sodek, as you have much more experience with me playing Amulet, tell us what is Amulet.
I don't feel like uh, I'm the most experienced Amulet player around because there's like a group of Amulet players who are still playing the deck even if that was bad. Pantheon Wine, for example, is one of the greatest examples of that. But still, I feel I can talk about it a bit. Okay, Amulet is a combo deck that abuses the Amulet of Vigor and Ravnica Bounce lands. Thanks to its interaction, you can generate a lot of mana, especially if you can play more land drops with Dread of I don't know this exact name. Do you remember?
Which card?
Dryad of
Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
Thanks. And Azusalas Bad Seeking. And you cast Primeval Titan to do even more nasty stuff. If you don't have Amulet, you can still play like a strange ramp deck or just use Dryad to combo kill with Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle.
Okay, so
Okay, and
I guess here is the first spot in which we have our differences when it comes to perceiving Amulet. I do think that Amulet is mostly a ramp deck, and then from time to time it's a combo deck. Especially with the addition of Cultivator Colossus, now you have 8 threats, and you just have 8 big monsters, and you are ramping towards them. And sure, of course, sometimes you will have Amulet plus Saga draw to yield you double amulets on turn 3, and you will just kill them with Titan. But I think first and foremost, Amulet is a ramp deck these days, and that's how it was approach, like how people approach Amulet for many years now. Even when Summer Bloom was illegal, you were kinda trying to be a ramp deck in many matchups as well. Like you were.
yeah, like,
So I would say it's a ramp deck first, and then it's a combo deck
yeah, like
rather than the
in
other
my
way
opinion,
around.
it all comes down to what you are playing. Like Jędrek, you were known for all these years to play something reactive. So that's why they couldn't combo the top 10 against you. And from my perspective, Amulet is a deck that I need to raise because they will combo me out. Because I was playing non-interactive stuff most of the
Yeah,
time.
okay, but I do think that against majority of the metagame you are a ramp deck because
Yeah. Okay. So
you're
we can
a ramp deck against anything interactive really. You are a because it's not about proactive reactive. It's more about interactive non-interactive as you said because you have to be a ramp deck against Merktide even though it's a proactive deck, and you have to be ramp deck against a control deck. You only have
yeah,
to
sure.
be a combo deck primarily against linears like Mill, like Burn, like any deck that you're playing. So
Your goldfish game.
yeah,
Okay. So Amulet as a ramp slash combo hybrid. And the deck right after Modern Horizons 2 was considered as clearly the best deck in the format, just because the interaction with Urza's Saga, finding Amulet, Urza's Saga creating a lot of constructs, etc., was considered very good. At the end of the day, it wasn't the case because with Modern Horizons 2 we also got a lot of good options to keep Amulet in check. Most likely, the most important is probably Unholy Hit, because it was able to kill Primeval Titans to get a tempo advantage and win before they can rebuild. But there are also other smaller things, for example, subtlety, for example, other reasonably fast and like slash combo decks that were around. Uh, Anything else you wanted
Yeah,
to add?
so I do think that there are two main points that are way more important than anything else. First, you already mentioned it's Unholy Heat being a 1 mana removal for Titan, which made basically every Unholy Heat deck, especially blue Unholy Heat decks, and even more, especially, I guess, decks that can have sideboard Blood Moons. So, for example, you can have sideboard Blood Moons with in Lurus, which kind of sucks for Amulet matchup. But, for example, Murktide is not a very good matchup. You can even say it's a bad one. Uh, and then I think second very important point is Hammer, because Hammer is a faster deck than Amulet. And because of that, there is a very hard to avoid constraint on Amulet, because you can't be too interactive game one as Amulet. You can't afford to play, I don't know, main deck Force of Vigor, or main deck, or like, I don't know, Lightning Bolts, even Green Renewal Spell, I don't know, Beast Within, Abrupt Decay. You can play those cards. You can play main deck Dismember, probably, because you need to be all lands and then your spells. You are playing like 33 to 35 lands, I think, right now. Most lists are playing around this number. So you just can't afford to have an interaction in your main deck. And usually, like historically, the way for you to interact with your opponents were lands. So, for example, if you're playing against Dredge or any other graveyard deck, you had Titan with Bojuka Bog. And Sodek is known for being uh, not a fan of this combination of cards. You were playing Tron, Titan had Ghost Quarter. You were playing Burn, Titan had Radiant Fountain, and so on and so on. And technically, you can deal with creatures with Valakut and Dryad, but it's way too slow against Hammer. And because of that, because the fact that Hammer is such a fast deck that can also kill from no creatures on board, like you need, if you have Sigarda's 8 and Ikmov Nexus, you can just kill your opponent when you untap. And because of that, it's really hard to deal with Hammer as another linear deck with few interactive spells. So I do think that Murktide and Hammer are by far the two biggest reasons why Titan, even though it was indeed heralded as the absolute broken piece of cards, like 3 months ago, 4 months ago, something like this.
Just after
In
Modern
June,
Horizons.
yeah, in June, so 5 months ago, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah, and there were many talks of like, should we ban Urza Saga? Should we ban anything else in Amulet? Stuff like this. Obviously, people were clamoring for Ragavan ban as well, but yeah, Amulet dropped in a matter of days, I think. It was like 1 week between it being perceived as the best deck in the format to it being unplayable, basically. So it was very shocking.
True.
Okay, so Sodek, what changed? What changed? Why Amulet is good now?
Okay. The most important reason why Amulet is good now is the new printing. Cultivator Colossus
Yes.
is the new card from the newest set. It's for 7 mana, XX. When it enters the battlefield, X is the number of lands you control. When it enters the battlefield, you can play a land from your hand. If you do this, you draw a card and you can repeat the process. So in practice, it's a 7 mana creature that will draw you a lot of cards because Amulet is mostly about lands. And if you also have Amulet of Vigor in play, these lands will enter the battlefield untapped. So you have even more mana to cast even more spells, etc. etc. The printing of Cultivator Colossus solved one big problem Amulet had. Amulet earlier did not have enough threats in the RAM deck. Like before the printing, there was only Primeval Titan and Summoner's Pact going for Primeval Titan. And after Summoner's Pact line was attacked by, for example, Chalice for 0, for Force of Negation, for another Dovin's Veto thing. So, um, so overall, like the Amulet needed the extra threats. Earlier, it was played, for example, Karn the Great Creator, but Karn the Great Creator wasn't exactly what you wanted to do in Amulet. Sure, Karn is a card of a Karn, and its Witchboard is a card that it's good in decks that operates on huge amounts of mana, and Amulet counts. But overall, it wasn't good enough to push the deck into another level, and I think that Cultivator Colossus can do this. There are also other maybe not that important elements that can change in next weeks. Uh, for example, uh, we have, for example, in my opinion, at least like a lot of force of negation around is something that Amulet was playing on because how Amulet right now is focused on creatures, so it's easier to adapt.
All right, so uh, I was doing some math regarding Cultivator Colossus. Have you already told our listeners what Cultivator Colossus does, or?
Yes.
Okay, so uh, as you already know, thanks to Sadek, Cultivator Colossus draws you cards for each land you put into play, basically. So there are two important things to understand when it comes to Colossus. First of all, and that's the most important part, is that Colossus turns all your lands into spells, basically. So if you play Colossus and you have 5 cards in hand, you will end up with 5 spells in hand in the end at the end of Colossus chains or Colossus chain. And second is you will draw a bunch of cards, and that part is the importance of this varies from time to time. Like for example, if you have Dryad plus Valakut in play and you play Colossus, it's really important to draw a lot of lands. Conversely, if you just play Colossus on an empty board with no Valakuts and no nothing, it's not that important to draw like a ton of lands. You're more interested in switching your hands to all gas than anything else. And to like the exact number of cards that you will draw on average is depends obviously on the number of lands in your deck. So if you imagine a hypothetical scenario when you put Cultivator Colossus on the stack, you have no lands in play, no cards in hand, or like you have some cards in hand and some cards in play, I guess, but the number of lands and spells is not important. So basically, you are putting Cultivator Colossus on the stack, and you have 59 card deck with X lands in it. So if you have 33 lands in your deck, you will draw roughly, or on average, you will draw 2.27 cards off of each lands in your hand. If you have 35, it's almost 2.5 cards per land. So you are drawing, if you have a stock Amulet list and you have 2 lands in hand when you play Colossus, you should expect to usually draw around 4 or 5 cards. And 2 of those cards will be spells, obviously.
One more thing, for all those of you who are thinking right now that if you have Karu, like Ravnica Bounce lands, you can draw your whole deck. No, that doesn't work that way. Like when I was reading
Sodek,
the card,
Sodek learned it the hard way. Sodek,
yeah, when I was reading the card, I was like, for a second that it will work, but apparently it does not because the cultivated colossus trigger has to resolve, and after it resolves, all other triggers will
yeah.
go to the stack,
And
including Faust.
we've been laughing at Sodek for like 2 or 3 weeks at this
Yeah,
point because
like,
he thought that bounce land draws your whole deck,
the laugh didn't stop.
and
So
and won't
yeah,
stop anytime soon. Okay, so we already know what new card um, the deck has, but the other very important question or thing is uh, what changed in the metagame. I think it's even more important than the new printing because I don't think that Cultivator Colossus alone would help you if the metagame was still heavy on Merctite and Hammer. Like, it just doesn't help in those matchups that much. Uh, because it only has trample, right? It doesn't have reach.
it has only trample. Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, like Colossus is not great against those decks that were very tough for Amulet to beat. So it's really important to observe that the reason, or one of the reasons why the situation of Amulet has changed, is that there was a rise in decks that are pretty bad against Amulet. For example, 4-color decks are not what you want to be on when you are playing against Amulet.
I
Like,
wouldn't say the matchup is terrible because Solitude
of course, it's
and
not terrible, but it's not good. I would say,
yeah, it's an
it
uphill battle for sure.
yeah, it's a comfortable matchup for Amulet. You are definitely favored. You might not be favored by much, but you are favored, especially with Colossus, because now you have more threats, as you already mentioned. The redundancy on your big creatures is very important, and it was a biggest weakness of Amulet for many years, basically. So you've been playing stuff like Turn Timber Symbiosis to find more Titans or stuff like this. So people were really desperate. So
Yeah, do you remember this learn package? Uh,
yes, Learn package was
I
something
heard
else as
that
well.
Gitnachi was doing that, and they were trying to learn and then play for 3 mana card that will look for a creature in top 6. It was so bad, but still playable.
I don't know. So in general, I do think that Colossus is really important in those matchups that emerged as popular decks, and the combination of those two factors makes Amulet into a pretty good choice right now. Uh, how good? I wouldn't say it's the best deck in the format. Not close to that.
No, of
Uh,
course not.
I don't think that Amulet can ever be the best deck in a format as long as Hammer and Merctate are left intact, like card inclusion wise, because anytime that Amulet goes up in popularity, people will just default to Merctate and Hammer, which are very good decks, and they're great against Amulet. So
Yeah,
there definitely can be there will be many good weekends to play Amulet. There will be some great weekends to play Amulet, but it will never be the best deck in my opinion, or it's very unlikely for it to be the best deck for a prolonged amount of time, as it
true.
was, for example, with Merctide or with Hammer, that were like best decks for weeks. Yeah, but definitely a good time to be an Amulet player. I think it's the best time to be Amulet player in like years, probably. I think the last time Amulet was very good was with, or even good, it was with Once Upon a Time. And
Yes, and right after they printed Dryad, it's probably the same set, yeah?
no, it was Once
No,
Upon a
it
Time,
was
and then
theirs.
3 months or 4 months later, it was Dryad.
Yeah, I think Dryad moment was also kind of important because it
Yes,
gave the deck another line of attack. Like now we are used to this Dryad, but at like the first weeks with Dryad were just ridiculous because I was so so used to that Titan comes down, it attacks me for 8, and that's the end of shenanigans. Maybe they attack me for 16 with double strike, but suddenly the like Titan was killing me with Oracle triggers, which was kind of strange.
Oh yeah, and I guess then I can't really remember. Was Titan good after they banned Once Upon a Time before they banned Field of the Dead? I don't think it was
It
great.
was reasonable, but it was more about being like it wasn't truly an amulet deck. There was a field Titan deck
Oh,
around.
the green white deck. Okay,
Yeah, or green blue
because
sometimes,
yeah, because there
something like
was
this.
like so many Ether gas back then, right? Because Uro
Yeah,
was a
and
thing,
like the
and
field of the death was really good. And the Elvish Reclaimer was a powerful card. I still think it is, but
okay.
it lacks a good home. Okay, so right now Amulet is good, and in my opinion, it's mostly because the meta isn't prepared. You already told about Murktide and Hammer, and meta week after week is spreading out, and like we see even more decks. Like in last week, we even saw like 3 dredge lists in top 16s of bigger tournaments, even top
I
16
think
in
that
TTQ.
there were like two dredges in top 8 in Paris, right? Or one copy.
One copy, but
Okay, it was
Paris
two Hilliards.
was
Two Hilliards.
yeah 2 healers. But like I don't uh, think that results in Paris were that important because like it looked like people just refused to play Modern Horizons 2 cards. So overall, I feel that right now Amulet is using the fact that people are still playing cards that were good like 3 weeks ago, but they aren't really powerful now. For instance, mm, Spreading Seas or Alpine Moon as a section for land attack and non-destruction, attack to the mana base, whatever you want to call it. Uh, it's not very effective against Amulet. It can be good from time to time,
Well,
but
I
it's
think
not
it's
what you
I
want to do.
think it's very varied between different draws because if your opponent has Urza Saga, those cards are insane. But if your opponent doesn't draw Urza Saga or play around them by bouncing Urza Saga on the return with bounce lands, they are not great.
Yeah.
But I think
And
I think it mostly revolves around two main things. First is and most important is Urza Saga, and then I think the second one is uh, if you are playing a counterspell heavy deck, you want to have Alpine Moon against Cavern of Souls. I think that's pretty
yes,
important. And but other than that, uh,
like
those type
I
of effects are and spreading is in general is pretty bad because you can just play bounce land and
yeah,
return the land with spreading seas. So the only great that I would say that spreading seas sometimes is great, but most of the time pretty bad. While Alpine Moon is sometimes
it's
great
okay.
and most of the time pretty solid in a right deck. Like I don't
Okay,
think that Alpine Moon is that great out of like red black, for example, most of the time, but out of Merktide or Grixis or another counterspell deck,
it's much more important.
it's much more important. Exactly.
But and overall, like there are much better tools to use to if you want to combat Amulet. And I want to mention like a few of them. Like there are still uh, old good cards that were housing Amulet for years. For example, Blood Moon. It's like really good way to stop an deck that relies on lands. Ethergast,
Ethergast, exactly.
yeah,
Ethergast, yeah.
that's the card that, in my opinion, it will return and it will be played in sideboards. For example, like maybe not Ethergast, but Doom Switch was playing Subtlety in that
Oh
model
yeah.
challenge, and I think Ethercast and Subtlety are in similar positions. Subtlety can be played for free. Subtlety can also attack. Maybe it's better than Cast,
I
but
think it depends. Like I think subtlety is a better card out of those tempo decks like Blue Red Merktide, but
for Lurus, for example, Ethercast is much better. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I will play an Ethergast in Grixis. I think there are better cards to deal with this deck. Uh, I do think that uh, Ethergast is better in 4 color. I haven't played 4 color myself, but I can imagine that having a card that's great against Amulet and is good against Blood Moon, which is a number one pretty good card against you as a 4-color player. It can be, obviously it varies. We already covered that in the 4-color episode. If you are playing against the Abundant Grove Blink versions, it can be kind of meh from time to time. If you're playing against the 60 cards Kahira versions with Planeswalkers, it's usually pretty good. And Blood Moon is great against Amulet, as Sodek already mentioned. So there will be more Blood Moons. So having answers to them is very good. Something you definitely want to have. And then I think there is another card that is very important to mention. I think
before you say it, I also want to mention Force of Vigor. Force of Vigor is a card that wasn't played versus Amulet that often, but after Urja's Saga got printed with Dryad around, with Amulet around, it's worth to have it. And having this 0 mana I Destroy Your Two Things card is just too good to pass up, in my opinion. I generally think that people are not playing enough Force of Vigors in their current decks.
I do think that, first of all, it's worse now with Cultivator Colossus because you are more about ramping. And second of all, it's best out of decks that can apply pressure. So, for example, Cascade. Like, you're playing Rhinos. You're playing Rhinos and you kill 2 of their stuff for free and then you Cascade into 8 power or 10 power, sometimes with Shardless, and you just kill them in 2 turns, which is kind of insane, while tapping their land with Fire Eyes or whatever. So that's pretty bonkers. And then the other card I wanted to mention, Dress Down used to be good against Amulet because you are killing Saga tokens, you are letting Titan resolve and then, or responding to Titan with Dress Down, letting it resolve and killing them with Unholy Hit or whatever, and they get no value off of it. But now, with Cultivator Colossus, like Dress Down is really good against this deck.
Yeah.
They're just tapping 7 mana, their creature is immediately dying, and they're drawing no cards. So, like, Dress Down is really good against Amulet right now.
Is Dress Down a better Ethercast?
Definitely in Lurus decks when you can replay Dress Down every turn. That's for sure. Other than that, I don't know. I think Dress Down is the more main deckable card. I've played a league with Grixis earlier on today, and my opponent was playing at least 2 main deck Dress Downs in Blue-White Control, for example. And you can't really play main deck Ethergas, but main deck Dress Down made sense, I think.
Yeah.
So
especially if like you as a Blue-White Control player, you probably always want to have responses to the Saga. So Dress Down is exactly where you want to be. Overall, I think that Dress Down will see much more play. And I'm not that sure about Ethergas. Maybe we'll see like 1-2 copies. Maybe we'll see more subtleties. Like people will for sure adapt to this Amulet meta, and we'll see if the Amulet can handle its title of the cool deck of this week. Deck is much
for
stronger
example,
right now.
Yes. For example, when it comes to Dress Down, I have been playing main deck explosives for like months at this point in Grixis, and I am strongly considering changing it to Dress Down right now. The main singleton main deck Dress Down, pretty good against most of the stuff that explosives were good against. So it's pretty good against Hammer, against Saga in general, but it's also great against Amulet right now. And this swap does 2 things, or like changes 2 things pretty dramatically. First of all, you are worse against Rhinos because you don't have main deck explosives for Rhinos, and you are worse against Chalice of the Void because you have less outs to Chalice. But overall, I think that this change is pretty good, and I will at least test it.
I also like the idea that you have a 5th effect to draw if you have Lurus and you want to
that's very good.
Build advantage.
And you are a bit better at getting Delirium because now you have enchantment. A singleton one, of course, but I think like I've been experimenting with a slightly different approach today with 4 considers instead of like 2 copies that I've had before. now dress down, and then you can think about playing 4 unholy hits instead of 3 hits, 3 bolts. Now you can play 4 hits and 2 bolts because you have more considers. I also had more discard spells and now an enchantment. So your unholy hit is much better early on because you will have delirium more often.
Okay, so overall, I feel that like we all agree that Amulet got better after the Cultivator Colossus sprint, and there are also tools to stop it and tools to make the deck unplayable for like next 2 weeks. So I'm happy that these meta shifts are still happening because like we are very far from solving modern, and we can't say that there is like one or two best decks because they change week to week, and that was cool for in mod like for modern for so many years, and I'm happy that it's a thing still in the end of 2021.
Yep, I do think that with the current card pool, it's very unlikely that model will be solved. Like bearing
Yeah,
some new additions, right? Like if you get something on Oko or Uro power level, sure, of course.
sure.
But with this current card pool and with just every standard legal set bringing like something on par with Cultivator Crosses, which is good in some archetype, but it's not like format defining card or like before we had Consider and Faithful Mending. So also like role players in some archetypes, but by
Yeah,
no
we got
means
some
like
of these role players. We have Cultivator Colossus, Faithful Mending. We have Tasha's Hideous Laughter, for example.
yeah, Hall of the Storm Giants and the red manland is played in red black.
We got Underworldly Gaze that gave the Dredge a new life, for
Yeah.
example.
So
Like
like
all these fun decks, are getting new tools so they can compete in versus these hyper top tier strategies, and we are slowly returning to this modern. From I think believe it was 2017 when it was considered the best
I think it
when
was
everything.
2017-18, just before Phoenix got printed in 2008. It was fall 2018 when Phoenix got printed.
Yeah, like when everyone was saying that this meta is like the modern from these years was just the best.
Yeah,
And
I think it was the summer of 2018 when uh, Jason Bloodbraid were already unbanned. Teferi got printed, and you could have basically played anything. Like Tron was good, Spirits were good. Like Strasky won a GP or maybe even two. Then he top aided
two
one and won the other one, I think, or maybe won
probably.
two. Yeah, he won in Stockholm and then top aided in Prague, and then Scales won Prague. Uh, the guy from Finland, Lori Pispa, won.
Larry Quiz. No, Larry Quiz. I was playing Dredge. And he was
Lori Pispa
one of the. Okay,
was his name.
sorry.
He won with Scales, and like I think Greg Kowalski almost top aided that GP with Jeskai. It was this breed of Jeskai decks with like free Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, and then all removal and counter spells.
Yeah, that
So
was something like
it was a pretty cool meta game.
okay. Overall, Amulet good, but will be hated out. So
Yes.
no worries about it.
Yeah, and
Uh,
yeah. So this is definitely good news for Amulet players, but as we all like discussed just a second ago, I just want to summarize that I do think that it's pretty unlikely that Modern will go through any major shakeups until Modern Horizons 3 drops.
yeah,
I do think that I think Modern Horizons 3 should drop. Like they've been releasing modern related product every 2 years, starting from Modern Masters 1 in 2013, and it was 2 years Modern Masters 2, 2017 Modern Masters 3, 2019 Modern Horizons 1, 2021 Modern Horizons 2. So now we are due for Modern Horizons 3 in 2023. So
are you sure that Lord of the Rings set wasn't introduced as a Modern Horizon set in 2022?
I don't think so, but I have no idea.
I'm like 50% sure.
Oh, that is. You mean that it's a set that's legal in modern, right?
yeah, like just in modern.
It won't be a standard legal set.
No,
Okay, so I don't know. Maybe,
we'll
but
see.
basically until some modern, like dedicated modern product comes by, I don't think that we'll see any major printings unless WotC screws up again, which might happen, as we know from history.
They're pretty good at it.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else we want to talk about, Sadek?
Maybe not now and not today, but overall, there are a lot of other interesting topics. And
Yes.
if you want to check them,
You can go to our Patreon, Modern Solutions. Links are in the description to our Patreon, to our Twitch pages, both of us, our Twitters. Basically, all the social links, as always, are in the description. Also, if you don't have plans for this weekend and you are living close Poland or even in Poland, there is a big tournament happening in Warsaw called Paprikaż. There will be links to this event in the description as well. So yeah, that's it. That's what we wanted to talk about, and we've done it. So here you go. We're gonna see you next week with a metagame update for December, because next week is December. I think it's first of December or second.
Sure, yeah.
It's second of December. Yeah.
Easy.
So yeah, next week we're gonna see we're gonna have the metagame update after we triumph this weekend in paper events. We will be able with.
I'm not sure if I will triumph because like I'm testing Dredge online and I have decent results so far. So
okay, so
I'm really considering playing Dredge in at least one of these events on Saturday. And if I'm playing Dredge, I probably won't end that well, but we'll see.
Okay, so I will triumph and Sodek will curse will curse his opponents after they find Bojuka Bok with this very popular Amulet Titan deck right now. I know that Canister is kind of considering playing Amulet on Saturday.
What?
But he cut Bojuka Bok from his deck.
Nice.
So, but I think if he learns that you are playing Dredge, he will put it back in.
I think that I will lose even without Bojuka Bok.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not much or nothing more to add. Thanks as always for watching. We'll see you next week with the metagame update. Take care, have a lovely weekend, and bye-bye.
See ya.